What's going on, everybody? You're watching DualShockers.com. We're here at PAX East 2014. We're here checking out some Grey Goo with Andrew. Andrew, pleasure.
Yep.
Let's get into it. What is Grey Goo? Because it sounds dirty, I'm not going to lie.
I won't even kid. There's a lot of nuances that go on with that.
I'm sure there's a lot of office jokes.
There's a lot of office jokes. Grey Goo is references the apocalyptic event where nanites come and pretty much devour the world. You can look it up on Wikipedia and stuff. It's all there. But Grey Goo for us is really looking about a faction that's really based around a bunch of nanites that said, hey, you know, how do they fit into the story of humanity, this alien race, and the Grey Goo all interacting on a planet that's referenced as Ecosystem 9.
No, I got a chance to sit down. We were kind of chatting a little bit about it. At first glance, a lot of people are going to say, oh, RTS, real-time strategy, is this just a StarCraft clone? I think there's a lot of subtle differences, and I'd like for you to kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can look at RTS, and we really said, hey, let's go back to the core of RTS, right? This genre was born when, you know, Dune 2, Command and Conquer, all of those games were made, and that was well before even StarCraft was around. And we said, hey, let's go back to that core genre that birthed there, and what was the fun that was existed there, and let's bring that back to the modern day. I mean, we look at the pillars of RTS, which is, you know, base building, economic management, and combat, and over the last 2 decades, it's kind of really gone out of balance. So it's really said, hey, let's put a focus here, let's put a focus there, but they've kind of destroyed the balance as far as all the games over the last 20 years. So we said, hey, you know what, we want to go back to the core. Let's really get back to that balance. And with Grey Goo, we went back to we want to make each of those things important in the gameplay. At the same time, we wanted to take the lessons we've learned over the last 20 years and make the course corrections that were necessary to keep it fun, right? People want to be engaging. They want to make important decisions when they press a button. It's not necessarily always about execution. It's also about the strategy and thought that goes into those moves that you want. And we really wanted to make those things very valuable to the player.
Now, when you guys are kind of brainstorming this, what is your thought to bring in, let's say, because you're going to have two schools of players, the hardcore RTS guys who know, like, I played a lot of StarCraft, I sat down, the controls, obviously, it's easy to get into. Well, let's say for a non-RTS player, somebody who's an FPS shooter kind of guy, what do you bring into the table to get those guys involved?
The simplicity. We really went to the RTS genre and said, look, the RTS genre got complex. Does that need to be there? Does it need to be complex? Yeah. Rather than saying, hey, it needs to have a lot of depth, because the two aren't the same thing. And we said, well, let's get rid of all that complexity. Let's give you simple tools, easy things for you to comprehend. You know, guy with a gun, tank that fires a specific way, and let you have n number of ways to use them, so that you have multiple ways to think about how you're going to play with him. How am I going to use this guy in my strategy? You know, we talk about the human units, like the artillery, right? He's got this idea where he can fire his artillery and smack somebody, but there's a secondary effect to that, where his artillery, if it doesn't hit anything, leaves behind this mine. Now the player's got this option to say, hey, do I run this artillery unit behind all my units? Or do I say, hey, use them defensively and lay a minefield as a trap and bait you with other units? That kind of depth that exists with the unit designs is really where we said, hey, let's make something simple for you to use that let your imagination come up with the strategies.
And it was interesting to see, even in the short time we got to play, we're actually playing player versus player, a lot of strategies were coming out just as we were kind of going back and forth. My opponent was just turtling up with, you know, with turrets, and that was his strategy to it. But there are ways to kind of combat those. There are ways to get around that.
There's multiple ways to do it. In fact, we made sure that when we started looking at the units that there wasn't an only one way to play, or there's the perfect build order or anything along those lines. It's really about, hey, what tools do I have at my army's disposal to take care of this problem? Whether it be somebody hiding away from you that's invisible, it's like, well, sure, you can attack ground. You don't even need to bring stealth detection. You could bring stealth detection if you wanted to. Or maybe you have your bombers coming and napalm the area. I mean, there's multiple options in order to solve for any problem in Grey Goo.
And a couple of cool things, you know, the hotkeys for building units when you're not even at your base, I thought that was pretty clutch. That takes, again, you're in the gameplay, you're not going back and forth to your base to switch out units. The terrain, I thought the terrain was very cool. You can actually hide units under trees so they can't be seen. So, what anything else that you guys are looking to include? Maybe some, you know, teasers of other things that might be coming into the fold.
We're gonna, when we get back to actually revealing more about the Grey Goo, you're gonna realize that those maps have a whole nother way of thinking about your strategies with the way the group plays with it.
Because right now we've only seen 2 out of the 3 factions. There's one elusive, I would think, main faction that hasn't been shown yet.
So there is the namesake of the Grey Goo. It is one of those things where we said, hey, we wanted to look at all these races and give give a play style element to each of them that everyone can find a home for. So, you know, whether it be somebody who's like the turtler, who loved the humans because he could turtle, or there's the people who are not quite into base building, but they're hyper aggressive. They like that execution, that StarCraft crowd even. There's an element, there's a race there for them, and how that all works, and how does that all play together. And that huge spectrum of different play styles, from, you know, turtling to hyper aggressive and everything in between.
To that rush player.
To that rush player. There's that entire spectrum in Grey Goo for you to find the faction and find the way you like to play. And that was really core to us to find, how do we define that for the player? How do we make that accessible to the player?
And you guys have some pretty epic epic units. We actually made what I call the giant transformer. It looked like a giant Constructicon almost.
Yeah.
We built I would say 8 structures, and they merged into one and just decimated a city, which is pretty cool.
Right. The beta race, who are really built around this idea of modularity and customizing things to function that they need. That their epic is that big battle fortress that has that big battle cannon on it. It has hard points that it can configure it, and it's a mobile factory in addition to it. So as it's moving across the base to go destroy its enemy, it's building its support army with it. So you're really kind of looking at it, yeah. And so each faction actually has those epic levels where it's like, hey, this is what we're bringing, this is the embodiment of this faction and how we're going to come play.
Awesome, exciting. So when can we expect to see Grey Goo all over the place? That sounds disgusting, but that's what it is.
Grey Goo is due out this fall. 2014, so we plan.
Good times, man. Andrew, thank you very much. Appreciate the time, guys.
Definitely, thank you for taking the time.
Grey Goo, take it seriously. At first, I thought Grey Goo was going to be like a platformer. I was not expecting RTS at all. So, guys, PAX East 2014, Grey Goo, we're out.